funny. Chantal talks about it like it's no big deal and it's just a regular part of their day-to-day operations, which I love. To me, CSE is like second generation on my account. She talked about the training. So the initial training at CSE, I provided them. I was like, here's the tool, let's walk through it, I'll show you how to use it, yada, yada, yada. Now, because she talks about how easy it is, they do their own training. They're steeped in it. They get it. Which to me is, what did Daniel say earlier? Something about leaders making leaders? I'm not saying I'm a leader, but perhaps teach some women to fish? Okay, so in an effort to pull back the curtain on my account, I thought I'd do a quick fly-through of it. Bare bones, talk to you about the specifics with a focus on injury reporting via it. It's not live, I just got a bunch of screenshots that we're going to fly through relatively quickly to talk about it. Okay, so Chantal alluded to this fact is that ESDC is the employer administrator for all federal employers. So what does that mean? They own who gets access to it. So if you like my account and would like to use it, you typically go to Annie or Jennifer and say, here's the individual that's going to use it. Here is their name, their credentials, their email, I think phone number, address, social security number, favorite color. No, I'm just joking. And then we register them. But there's also the provision, and training will occur on X date. Because we're not trying to register a whole bunch of new users and send them out there to, submit false reports. It's about giving them access to a tool, showing them how to use the tool, and then they go forward and conquer. And unlike BC, we do have our federal employers segregated by firm and division. So firm is kind of like the big entity, and a division could be any number of different locations or business functions or anything like that. So you can have an individual user that has access to a number of these or only one of these things, okay? And you forgot your password? That's not our problem. That's yours. There is a tab within my account that says, forgot your password. You click that, it asks you those typical security questions, like what's your mother's maiden name, or what's your pet's name when you were 15, or what's your favorite color, like those kinds of stuff, so you can figure it out and get it back, okay? So, if you're registered for my account and you log in, this is the home screen that you would see as a federal employer. It's different than what you would see as a regularly classified employer, because if it does, then it shows you how much you're paying, the most you could pay, the least you could pay, and all these kinds of things. But you guys are self-insured, and it's a little bit different. So you log in. There's a number of tabs across the top over here. And what we're going to do is pay particular attention to the e-forms, because that is where you make and view injury reports. So you click on e-forms, and then you're pushed into this subscreen here. It says, please select. For those individuals that are simply creating injury reports, if you click on create a form, then this is what pops up. Injury report. What a novel idea. That's what we're trying to create as we're trying to submit information. So up it comes. So if I click on injury report, it takes you to this screen. Now, this is what I like about my account. It is not your IMS or HRMS. It is simply a portal to the WCB that has some claims information in it. So I would encourage you not to use it as either of those other two things that I've mentioned, because it is not that. However, it has some cool functionality, especially when you talk about injury reports. So if you start an injury report and you save it at any point, it ends up down here in kind of this pending state. And they stay there for 90 days. Well, why would you want them to stay there for 90 days? Well, say I am a cook for the Coast Guard, and I cut my finger in the galley, and we tape it up, and I come back, and I go, yeah, it's fine. But you know what? We're going to make an incident report, the Coast Guard's own thing, and we're going to start a WCB report just in case. But we're going to leave it down here in a pending status. Say 2 weeks down the road, I'm like, geez, my finger, not so good anymore. It got infected. So I'm going to need to seek out some health care. That means there's going to be a cost associated with that. That means that we care at the WCB. When do we care? Well, always. But when it comes to injuries, when there's lost time or someone seeks medical aid, costs, okay? And once that happens, then you can choose to submit it at that point. So there's kind of a repository down here of any claim that is in a pending status or you're unsure of. And if at the end of 90 days they self-delete, but prior to that point you can go in and go, you know what? Paul's fine, his finger's not infected, I'm going to delete that, and it would disappear off there. Okay? We mentioned the circuitous nature of injury reporting within the federal employers, and it is such. So an injury happens at DND, and they fill the form out, and then that form goes to ESTC. Jennifer referred to the process they do to make sure that it is up to snuff, and then it comes to the WCB. So when we heard this, we said, well, the current iteration of MyAccount's not going to work because it's straight reporting from employer to the WCB. So we went in and made some changes to that. So now what happens at a regional federal employer, instead of saying submit, it says validate. And validate is just a fancy word for saying make sure all the information is in there and that it's right. Okay? If it is not, then you politely get an error message saying, you can't submit it. This is what the error message looks like live in MyAccount. So this is the very first page of the incident report. If you know how to fill it out on paper, you know how to fill it out online. It's exactly the same thing. It's just repackaged in a more user-friendly format. So if we were on page 1 of the incident report, which is the user worker information, and I hadn't filled out the worker name, I would get an error message if I try to click next or validate. Okay? So if you want to do any portion of the incident report sooner rather than later because it gives you pleasure, I'm not sure why you choose to do that rather than going through it one by one, you can jump to any tab along the side of the screen. So you have the injury information, you could have the earnings information, whatever you choose to do first. If you exit, it auto-saves that for you, and it ends up at that bottom portion where all those pending claims were for 90 days. Once you get to the end of the form, so we've made our way through all of these tabs, from the injured worker information to their injury information, down to view and submit form. You decide to, well, first you can view the form as a PDF to make sure it looks good. You can also then save that PDF and keep it for your own records. I know some employers that save it electronically and print it, so they have an electronic copy and a paper copy for when the apocalypse comes. Okay? Once that happens, you can then hit validate the form. So, again, that kind of does a quick check to make sure that all the fields are populated and complete, and then, in theory, it ends up in ESTC's lap. That is true. But there's a redundancy in the process to make sure that ESTC knows there's a claim there. So you send an email to the general box saying, hey, ESTC, Paul got hurt, Daniel got hurt, go check out the MyAccount bucket. They pull it out, and then they do their check and send it along to us. In my experience, dealing with Jennifer and Annie and her team, they were in there emptying the bucket daily or weekly. So the email notification was just a redundancy or stopgap to make sure that nothing was missed. But in reality, I don't think it ever happened. So the bucket was getting dumped as quickly and as often as possible. So then they review it and submit it. So the flyover is complete. We've come in for a soft landing. Why is this important? This is the portion of the day where I shame. It is very important. You talk about injury management. Daniel went through all the fundamentals of injury management through his SAFER model and those various components. But we've been talking about the fundamentals of injury management for a long time. If anybody's familiar with the Institute of Work and Health in Ontario, they have, 8 principles of injury management? He says 7. Okay, I'll take his word for it. But there's all kinds of good stuff that you need, like dedicated and trained staff. It doesn't help if you say, Paul, you're returned to work and I have no sweet clue about it. I need to know what to do and when to do it, right? Dedicated, trained staff. Early and compassionate contact. For me, that is the easiest gesture of a positive return to work culture. You're not here. We want to know how you're doing. Know that we're working on finding a safe and timely return to work plan for you. What can I do to help you return to work? It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be real. I've heard employers saying, oh, no, I'm not calling them. They're going to think I'm harassing them or the union's going to put grievances in. Really? How many times have you felt offended if someone called to see how you were doing? Andre? No? Yeah. Feels good to know that somebody cares. The process. Chantal mentioned that, right? They educated them first on their return to work process and then on MyAccount. Not the other way around. There needs to be some sort of process that we're all following. It needs to be written down and documented. It doesn't matter if it's all in Andrea's head. What if Andrea says, you know what? I'm done here. This is way too much work. I'm out. Well, there goes your return to work plan, your return to work program. So we need to have a common songbook that we're all singing from and working from. Relationships, I'm not going to beat that dead horse. Call it relationships, call it partnerships, call it exchanges, call it whatever. You can't do it in isolation. You have internal relationships that are important, be it through the union, supervisors, employees. You have external relationships that are important. Healthcare providers, the WCB, doctors, whomever. What is it? You can attract more bees or flies with honey than you can with vinegar? So if you're out there rubbing everybody the wrong way, then it's probably going to lead to some negative outcomes. But if we're all singing from the same songbook, happy, in a positive direction, it usually works a little bit better. And then you learn. We don't say it's one and done. The return to work plan, which was created in 1993, is awesome. We're never going to change it again. We might as well carve it in stone. Nonsense. Continuous improvement, right? Does anybody's organization believe in continuous improvement? Military? Yes. F-35s? Maybe. Maybe something else. But we're always looking for a better tool, right? That wasn't meant as a dig. That's... Let me be clear. I think the fact that we don't have the F-35s is an exercise in continuous improvement because we didn't rush to buy it. We're still trying to figure out if it's the right tool, right? Oh, well, there you go. So, I would agree from that being here as a maritime community. So, away from work, why does it matter? Literature will tell us if you're away from your job for 6 months, 50-50 chance you will ever come back. 50-50, flip a coin. Does anybody have employees who have been away from their work for more than 6 months? Yeah, I'm so glad you were honest. Because I was going to say, all of you. No. But there's definitely organizations that have injured workers away for a long time. Daniel used graphs. I'm going to use a couple. What does this say? The blue line is you guys. The orange line is everybody else. So those numbers are the average duration in days for injuries, okay? So way back in 2006, average days for a lost time injury was 91. Anybody in the room been away from work for 91 days outside of a secondment or a really awesome vacation? Or maternity, that's true. I was away from the office for 91 days for paternity leave. I can relate to that. I came back a changed man in 91 days. I forgot what my job was. I forgot what to do. I forgot when to do it. Now, can you imagine being away for 113 days now? Because that's the average in 2014. So we had this 91, low water mark in 2008, 60. Hey, something was getting better. We don't know what, but it was working. And then the great shift, heading upward. And we've kind of plateaued now. So average days away from the workplace for a federal employer is 113 days. What did I say was the 50-50 point? 6 months? We're getting there. We're not quite, but we're getting there. But there's definitely people over this that are at that point. Again, let me let you in on a little secret. At the WCB of Nova Scotia, we have a provision in our act that says any injury that is reported to us outside of 5 days, that employer is subject to a fine. 5 days of you knowing that it happened. Okay? A fine. Geez, late reporting fine. Oh my goodness. Does that happen for federal employers? No, it does not. Look how many of your injuries are coming in late. 2014 high water mark, 75%. I wonder if there's anything we can do to make it better. I wonder. Last graph, I promise. What does it tell me? This is kind of a proxy for the WCB becoming involved in a claim. It's the days to first payment of Turb. So, Turb is temporary earnings replacement benefit. So those are the money that we're paying for an injured worker to be away from work. Your earnings, guaranteed compensation. So here we are for the feds in 2014, 39 days. 39 days for us to cut the first check. So you would say, oh, you know what? Well, you get the file and then you got to make your decision and figure out if it's legit. That is true in some cases, but 9 times out of 10, we are so involved because we have the injured worker calling us, we have the employer calling us, sometimes we have physiotherapists calling us, so we pretty much know almost all the facts when the claim finally does get to us that we hit the ground running. So if we're adding days to that 39 or 36, whatever it is, it's a couple. It's not 30. So we need to figure out how to quicken that process. We talked about some improvements in injury reporting infrastructure. We talked about some policy changes at ESDC, perhaps the removing of counter signatures. So we have all the stars aligning to make this look a hell of a lot better. Would you agree? Yes, me too. So, throughout the course of the day, we've talked about leadership. Yes. We've talked about engagement. Yes. Talk to your people, listen to your people, ask your people, right? We've talked about process, yes, and infrastructure. And if we have all these things kind of moving in the same direction and moving tickety-boo, then we get this. My son told me to put this slide, and I thought it was very salient for the message that I'm trying to articulate. It's not anything in particular, not one thing that's going to solve the situation. It is about having the entire process and infrastructure and people in place. Everyone paddling from the same songbook. Everyone working towards the same end. Safe and timely return to work. Safe and healthy employees. Can anyone argue with that?